So, the death of obligation. We're living in a graveyard in America of the death of obligation. Obligation's been killed, and killed, which is understandable because obligation was misused in a way of injustice. And injustice injured people, traumatized people, and I think people rebelled against obligation. But now we're living in a world of whatever I want to do. I owe nobody anything, and I do whatever I want, I think however I want, I define myself however I want. Which in theory is kind of like a cool thing, right? Like, okay, I get to be whoever I want. I get to say whatever I want. I choose, which is amazing. That's like the epitome of free will. But it's like free will without obligation is like a freewheeling, dangerous entity. Let me explain. I grew up that way. If I want to be a good person, I will, but I'm not obligated to. Really, if I want to stop at this stop sign up there, I choose to. I'm not obligated to. If it makes sense to me. What about the law? What about obligation? But it's dead. It's dead. It's dead. I came up with this with a client because we were talking about California. In California, a lot of people get to do what they want right now, more than other states. And it's kind of dangerous for the state. There's a lot of bad things happening, Police can't enforce a lot of things with buying and shoplifting and homeless and drugs. And it's really, really not good. There's an interesting thing in the Torah about this, really, is that we say that God brought us out of Egypt. The number one commandment is God brought us out of Egypt to be our God. Let me go back. I know this is a little bit disorganized here. I'm sorry. When we don't have obligation and we do whatever we want, we have a problem. Let me explain it in a more humorous way. There is a situation right now, so many people, including myself, will go to Trader Joe's, go to a store, and we don't know what to choose. Should I choose this? Should I choose that? And it's an interesting trap. Go to the refrigerator. I don't know what to eat. It's a little different. But when there's something that really matters, there's no confusion of should I choose this or should I choose that. There might be a confusion of I don't know what's going to work. I don't know how to get there. I'm very confused. But this kind of confusion is a confusion of meaninglessness. Like it is irrelevant whether I choose the brand of spaghetti sauce called Borsalino or I choose spaghetti sauce called Badicchio. They both taste good. They're both red and cost a similar price. And we're wasting so much time. Oh yeah, how much time I may have wasted in my life thinking about this. So I'm speaking to myself and to you and to all of us that get stuck in these traps. But when there's something of real value, like, oh, let's say I really want to make my friend happy. So now, the price is not the main consideration. I mean, how much money I have. I really want to know which pasta sauce he wants. Which is really going to make him happy. I mean, like a great meal. My friend Rotem's going to love it. Rotem, I love this type of spaghetti sauce. Amazing. So when it's like that, it has value and meaning. So the choice has things to weigh. But in those other situations, it's completely meaningless. And I think you know what I mean. You are listening here. There's an OCD factor built into it where it's compulsively trying to figure out something. But I think the trap is that there is no real meaning. There is no real meaning. Like we go to the refrigerator. There's nothing to eat. There's stocked shelves full of stuff to eat. We're like, there's nothing to eat. What do you mean there's nothing to eat? There's endless food to eat. There's nothing I like. There's nothing that's going to feel good. But it's because pleasure and these random assignments of meaning and value don't really mean anything. Real values, true, deeper things mean something. And when we have something that means something, it really matters a lot. For example, the confusion over what should I do with my time. Yesterday I was working with a client and he said he has a moonlighting job and he wanted to discuss just briefly if he was in integrity with himself or he was violating the contract because his contract says he's not allowed to teach for other organizations. He teaches for the organization that he works for Turns out he's administrating a side job. It's probably permitted. But I made a comment to him. I said, you should know our Jewish tradition teaches us that to work for the second job during the first job's downtime while still getting paid might be stealing. So what should I do with this hour? If it's thinking about, okay, well, I have an obligation not to steal, and yet I have this important value called make some extra money for my family to get out of credit card debt. So my choice has value. It might be hard to choose still, but there's no more trap of like, which should I do? I don't know. Should I choose this activity? Should I choose that activity? So when I lack the clarity about what to choose, it means that I'm not in tune with values and obligation. Because when there's values and obligation, it kills the confusion of meaninglessness. That's what I'm coming to offer, a concept to mull over and to chew. And I would love your feedback if you're listening to this. I have a few people I know are listening, and when you listen to this, I would love your feedback. What do you think of this statement? The confusion and trap of choosing back and forth things that just seem like you can't figure it out could often be the trap of meaninglessness that comes from a lack of obligation and values. When there's no values and obligation, then there's meaninglessness. And it's almost like polar opposites. When something really matters, why does it matter? It matters because there's like right and wrong. Because why is it so important to not steal? It's like my values, right? Why is it so important to earn money for someone? Because there's like right and wrong? Because it's meaningful to me to be a caretaker? Maybe. But then maybe the next day it's not meaningful to me to be a caretaker because it's too much effort. It means on a deeper level there's right and wrong, which is actually another code language for talking about obligation. Chiyuv. The idea that there's something that matters that is right and wrong. Something. Okay, so we have this Trader Joe's back and forth confusion idea. We have the refrigerator idea. So the refrigerator can teach us meaninglessness. The Trader Joe's idea can teach us just like there's no obligation, there's no value, there's no values, right? So both are different forms of emptiness, confusion. Now, what does this have to do with our culture and the rant that I'm on? It has to do with that because with the idea that I grew up in college with, that I, fancy words at Harvard, we have ultra relative constructivism. I don't even know if people use that in college anymore. Ultra relative constructivism. Ultra, it's like powerfully, it's all relative, it depends on a perspective, and it's constructivism. We each construct our own meaning of reality, which means that everything is my own definition of what's meaningful, which basically kills obligation. That is the seed and the death of obligation. And once obligation is gone, I'm offering an idea that misery begins to set in. It certainly was true for me, and I had no idea. It's this plague in America by accident of well-meaning, loving, good parents with good values. Honey, I just want you to be happy. Happy to be happy. It has to matter to me, be pleasurable to me, meaningful to me. Now, it might work out great because I might choose values and obligation, and that's what makes me happy. But what if I choose, well, I want to be happy? I told a client last week that I remember working in Deerfield in Riverwoods, and they sent a teenage girl to work with me, and the question, should I go on antidepressants? Because I didn't get a new car for my birthday at 16 years old, and all my friends got one, and they're all on antidepressants, and so like that's normal. Maybe I should go on one. But this is a very different kind of example. Because she didn't get the pleasure and the enjoyment of getting a gift and feels unfair, then she's depressed beyond understanding. But that's such an empty path. It's so sad for her and other people. It's like we need to help ourselves and others get out of this death of obligation, get into the life of meaning and commitment. Commitment to choose things that I'm obligated to do with my free will. Let's have a free will party of just going after things that we believe in, things that we want to fulfill obligations that we know deep down are right and wrong. And let's help other people do that too. Let's have a free will party. but not free will to do whatever we want. Let's make ourselves servants of the truth. That I'd find, you decide for yourself. I'd be curious about that too. Do you agree that being servants of a truth, enslaving, I don't like that word, but putting myself into service. Servant is someone who's of service of the truth, is a way to become fulfilled. And that is following through on obligations. So that's what I'd like to know, if you agree with that. Or maybe not. Maybe that's not the road to happiness. I think that is a road to deep inner happiness and contentment. And it's a trap out of the emptiness that we see from the death of obligation. We have to give birth to obligation. Obligation for a president. Obligation for a president. And I never thought I would, if you ask my parents, I threw off all the chains of obligation. I was attracted to Buddhism, which is the ultimate, in a lot of ways, killing, in some ways, of attachment and obligation. Relationships, no obligation, no, I don't have to do anything for anybody, and everything. There are good aspects of that practice, for sure. Don't get me wrong. Ways to grow that are tremendous. But it's about detachment from any obligations and commitments, really. Even in the Zen Buddhist, being attached to being detached is an attachment. It's like funny Buddhist philosophy kind of concepts. So we did not lead for me. The whole point is, it did not lead to me to happiness, did not lead me to fulfillment. The opposite, it led me to harrowing emptiness that I didn't even know what to do with. And I want to suggest these ideas, and I'd love to know your feedback. It's about, let me see if I missed something else. Yes, I did. Let's talk about the idea of honoring family members and honoring people. I have some clients who still believe in, quote, traditional values, which is family first. I have an obligation for family, which is not always healthy. What does that mean? It means that I may show respect to my parents, even if, quote, they don't deserve it. Why? Because they are my parents. In other words, I have an obligation. But whose obligation? It's like floating in air. So the first thing is, this obligation is a divine obligation, right? And realizing that over my last 20 years has helped a lot in my relationships and in my life. For example, honoring parents, honoring elders, honoring other people. Why? I accept it as an obligation. And I would encourage you to consider the same, but not randomly, but because God wants us to. God wants us to show respect to certain people in our life, regardless of whether or not they, quote, earned it. Now, this is huge, because who we're showing honor to is the person, but we're doing it for God, not for the person. So they're showing respect to the person for God. So really, I'm really honoring God by honoring that person. So it becomes irrelevant whether they earned it or not. In our culture, with the death of obligation, it also kills, in my opinion, the differentiated levels of people. So I grew up in an unspoken mindset that there is no difference between the parent level or the adult level 20 years older than me and me. So my opinions are equally valid in the conversation, equally should be heard, and in some ways that could be true when we're discussing and growing. There's a place for that, I would argue. However, there may be an obligation, or even a very important moral principle, if you will, to allow theirs to be more dominant, their opinions, their thoughts, not in all matters, their exceptions, not for now. And this is good. This is good. The last couple of days, my daughter's engaged, and it's very interesting. Her her engagee is talking to his parents. We were all having a big discussion, and made a strong suggestion about when the wedding should be and how the wedding should be. And the father was a beautiful father, smiling at him, his younger son being almost a little chutzpah, but not really. And then the son, I saw him back off and say, no, Abba, Father, you have a lot of wisdom, so I would take all the points you say into consideration. The son didn't say, I give up on myself and I have no more opinions. He said, I will take into consideration and I will put aside mine for a little bit and be humble and see what I can learn from you, and not push my agenda on you and overpower you and discount you from the beginning. And I think in our culture, that's unfortunately what has happened. So we need to restore our commitment to these values and choose to get ourselves into the world of obligation. It will help us choose. And I think in mental health, that's really big. Because if I'm depressed, if I have OCD, if I've got anxiety, and I'm overwhelmed, listen, I could still have a day of fulfilling obligations, of doing things for other people, of living according to values and morals. We can talk much more about this. But I have to end this now, this power class. And I want to say that if you're listening now, awesome. And give me feedback. Feedback number one, do you agree with the concept that I'm coming to? That meaninglessness is, say it right from before. Well, I don't actually remember at this moment, so I'm going to pause. There were 2 or 3 things I can't remember. I'd have to review what I said earlier. And I'd love to hear your feedback in general. I'd love to have a conversation. I'd love to grow together. Have a blessed day.